Found a very good piece out of the American Conservative today, buttressing what I've been saying since the start of this channel. President should scrap the 2023 National Defense Industrial Strategy. Revitalizing the military base will require a fresh start. I completely agree. We're going to go through some of this piece here. It talks about the revitalization of the American industrial base around the Defense Department and why it's atrophied to the point it has. In January 2024, the Pentagon released its first National Defense Industrial Plan. This document, and earlier the creation of the new position of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Industrial-Based Policy, were meant to address the glaring problems with America's military-industrial base that were made painfully obvious by the rapid rate in which American munitions were consumed in Ukraine and later in the Red Sea and Israeli airspace. We discussed on this channel in a previous video, Navy reveals procurement woes, which I'll be sure to link in here, that the Navy fired 60 SM-6 missiles during its 15-month campaign against the Houthis. We only produce 150 a year, so we used 40% of a year's production right there. And this goes into the needs of the industrial base. And we're just going to go a little bit into it here. Physical goods and the capital infrastructure to prove them are what matter in war. And not all material goods are fungible when it comes to military production. Despite America having roughly 3 times as much industrial manufacturing output as compared to 1972, though coming up on 20 years later, we still have not returned to pre-Great Recession levels, the idea that this production capability could currently be applied to military industrial needs seems hard to imagine. I agree, you're not getting soda pop bottle makers to make artillery shells overnight. Hence why the U.S. thus far failed to reach its goal of producing a measly 100,000 155mm artillery shells a month, and still doesn't expect to reach that figure until Q4 of 2025, over 3 years after the war in Ukraine began. To place in context how pathetic that situation is, in 1980 the U.S. was producing 84,000 shells a month with a capacity of quickly ramp up to 438 shells a month if needed. It's needed now. Do the math, that's over 4,380,000 artillery shells a year. Well, let's get into those Russian numbers. Meanwhile, Russia is producing roughly 2 million rounds of 152mm shells annually, and easily ramping up production by a factor of 5. 2 million rounds a year adds up to 166,000 shells a month. Double. The 84,000 number here in 1980 is 16,000 less than what we're doing now at peak capacity. And that's still 66,000 less than the Russians. Somehow we've gone from the capacity of being in danger of running low on air interceptors because of the current production rate of 12 a year. And I don't know exactly which he's referring to with 12 a year, because as we've gone through, by the numbers, depending on which interceptor he's talking about, that could be a THAAD, might be Patriot, but it certainly is an SM-6. SM-6 production is at 150 a year, to be doubled to 300 a year by 2028, according to the Pentagon. One might notice the intense steel production went hand in hand with the ability to mass produce military equipment in a relatively short period of time. Yet, 8 decades later, the U.S. share of global steel production has cratered relatively to the rest of the world, producing only 89.3 million short tons of steel. Meanwhile, China is producing over 1 billion tons of steel. Half of the global production. That's incredible. Because no matter how technologically advanced we are, We've got to encase it in something. We've got to put it in a delivery system of something, and that's probably going to be made of steel or aircraft aluminum or compound fibers. Who knows? But our production is woeful. This is the conclusion of this specific article. Trump has demonstrated that he means what he says and wants to restore America and free it from the stifling shackles of the bureaucratic state. He is perhaps the once in a generation figure who is capable of serving the Gordian knot and restoring not only America's military industrial potential, but doing so also freeing American manufacturing to thrive once more. Now is the time to toss out the old, failed systems and begin anew. I completely agree. I completely agree with that. And that being the conclusion to this article. In this article, he does point to Palantir's chief technology officer, Shimon Sankar's short essay, The Defense Referendum, which I think is an excellent piece. And we're going to briefly go through some of this. As a nation, we are in an undeclared state of emergency. I think that is a great way of putting it. Because we really are. When it comes to our ability to procure and produce the systems that we are saying we're going to require, we can't do it. We simply cannot do it. And there's reasons for this. A lot of reasons. A lot of them are bureaucratic, and they can be gotten rid of by the current administration. DOGE, cut red tape. And here he goes through, it's called the 18 These. We're not going to go through them all. But I want to kind of show you a few of the charts here. In 1993, after the Cold War, America wanted a peace dividend and defense spending was slashed by 67%. The Secretary of Defense held a dinner at the Pentagon, the so-called Last Supper, to tell the 51 primes they would not all survive. Today, there are 5. We're going to scroll through a chart, and we're going to take our time, and of course this will be linked in the description. But I want to go through this to kind of show you the consolidation in the defense industry since the end of the Cold War. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, RTX, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. Those 51 companies, as you can see in this graph, became 5. This is an amazing graph. I love this graph. This is one that I'm going to keep because it just shows the monopsony of this. It's absolutely incredible. The most important consequence of the Last Supper wasn't a reduction in competition in the defense industrial base, but the decoupling of commercial innovation from defense and the rise of government monopsony. Consolidation bred conformity and pushed out the crazy founders and innovative engineers. This was the great schism of the American industrial base. I agree. In his 18, he points out a number of things. And one of the biggest things, we're just going to go, it's a great example, and we're going to go through it right now. Before the fall of the Berlin Wall, only 6% of defense spending went to defense specialists, so-called traditionals. The vast majority of the spend went to companies that had both defense and commercial businesses. Chrysler made cars and missiles. Ford made satellites until 1990. General Mills, the cereal company, made artillery and inertial guidance systems. So companies had different subcontracting sub-companies that worked with the military. This is a defense companies by market cap and their number of employees. You can see how huge and monopolistic they are. And we have to spread it out. We have to spread it out. The theses of defense reform. Monopsony is the root of what ails us. I agree. Monopsony is one of the roots. We need innovation coming in from all over the place. Avoid a monopolistic buyer at all costs by approximating market mechanisms and dynamics at a key principle of design of the DoD. The newly created Space Force is a worthy compatriot to the NRO. What looks like duplication is insurance against complacency and unpredictability. There is nothing more costly than losing. And that's one of the things he goes through. And again, we're not going to go through everything here, but we are going to cite a number of things that just scream that we need to think outside the box. Cost plus contracting makes the nation dumber, slower, and poorer. This is a chart. This is a great chart. Cost plus launch kept costs in the stratosphere. Commercial drove costs into the ground. Falcon 9 was 10% the cost of the Legacy. Now check out this chart. Launch per kilogram. Saturn V, $25,600 per kilogram. The Space Shuttle, $51,200 per kilogram. The Delta IV Heavy, barely below the Saturn V. Here's where we are today. Falcon 9 has brought it down to below 6,000. Falcon Heavy below 3,000. Estimate on Starship, $200 a kilogram. This is why private companies need to be involved in the defense sphere, because you can drive down costs like that through innovation. A budget is a plan, and no plan survives first contact. That is true. A person is the program, the primacy of people. This, I think, should be number one right here. The only requirement is winning. The most important projects don't come from requirements. America's cultural strengths are fundamentally creative and improvisational. The requirements process ensures we play to our weaknesses. In a fight, no one cares about the requirements document. The only requirement is winning, and winning requires engaging in a messy, overlapping, seemingly wasteful, but actually efficient process of being better. Validating the requirements leads to solving yesterday's problems without today's context. We have countless validated problems. So many problems, it's unreal. We can't produce a ship. We are so far behind on our Constellation-class frigate. It is now going to be delivered in 2029. Oh, by the way, China's launching their frigates, and they expect to be doing at least 3 a year. Put the pebble in the right shoe. You can't separate the roles of creating requirements and delivering capabilities. Conway's Law. You ship your organizational chart. CCMDs need budget to introduce strategic competition. And this one here is another one that they should be relisted. National security is economic prosperity. DGI should not exist. The drone was an American birthright. But bad policy from the FAA, which prohibited beyond line of sight operations, and DOG's rigid ITAR restrictions deprived Americans of untold economic prosperity. We got it right with the GPS, and semiconductor technologies, where the government was the initial consumer but not the most important in the final calculus. Once again, proving that having these businesses, private and defense, pushes innovation and lowers costs. Make the primes business worthy. This is a big one. America should demand that its prime defense contractors have commercial businesses to subsidize taxpayers' research and development and prove they are competitive. Most of the primes today do not have commercial businesses. When they do, we are reminded they are not competitive. See Boeing and Starliner. In the 1980s, Raytheon tried to diversify by entering commercial construction industry. Harvey Sapolsky notes, this proved to be an expensive mistake because defense is not like other businesses in its forgiveness of cost overruns and time slippages. What he's saying here is simple. You screw up on a commercial contract, you're out. I'm not paying you to do nothing. I'm not paying you an overrun. Your bid said this. This is your bid. Do the job. Do the job now. Is where the government's like, oh, you get to it when you get to it. Have a couple billion more. Here you go. This is another great chart. This shows the percentage of defense contracting as opposed to private sector. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Boeing. And that Boeing one, I think we can start putting a bunch of asterisks around that one too. Risk capital, not taxpayer capital. Thank you. There's a lot of proprietary programs in Boeing, Raytheon, and Lockheed that the government doesn't even have access to. As a proprietary program, it's only those companies that have. And they're using their capital to do it. They're not taking a government contract for it. That's a great example. Cost reimbursed independent research and development is an indulgence. It isn't real research and development. Cost type contracting enables contractors to play with house money. So they can just constantly go to the hose, which is the U.S. government, who's just going to keep spitting out money left and right, so they don't have to justify their research and development. Private R&D in the commercial world far outstrips government R&D. The 1960s are gone. Companies must invest their own capital. Their asses must be in the hot seat if we want innovation. Amen, brother. Your ass on the line. Your money on the line. Small business programs should not be welfare, meaning you should not endlessly fund these companies. Thank you. DoD and its proxy forces must stop competing with industry. We are on the same side. One is going to push you more than the other. Federally funded research and development centers have the false moral certitude of being nonprofits, which is about as believable as America's hospitals being nonprofits. Again, thank you for stating it how it is. FASA's commercial item preference is the most violated law in the land. Government often seeks to recreate products industry has already developed. How many times do you hear about the government spending money on a product that already exists, that you could just take right off the shelf? Productivity is more lethal than stockpiles, which is what one of the bases is what I've been saying now forever, pointing out our inability to construct warships. Our procurement process is absolutely back-asswards. It's insane. The red tape you have to go through and the years it takes in order for something to go online is unacceptable when American lives are on the line. Rule of law works. It does. Let people speak to the mission. Warriors fight with guns and git. The resurrection of the American industrial base. This is the conclusion. This is by Shaiman Sankar, Palantir Chief Technology Officer. And I will, of course, link this into this report, into this video. Thank you very much for the great report. It really is a good one, Shaiman. With that, I just kind of wanted to bring you the outline of it. Everything that you heard in here is going to be linked. I hope you'll take a peek at it. It's vital. I agree wholeheartedly with the conclusions. Should scrap the 2023 National Defense Industrial Strategy, sending the young kids from Doge, gut this thing, and invite the civilian market in, and let's make it happen. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. Obsolete warships and strategies, they'll all be replaced, but we need to have something to replace them with and the ability to create that replacement, which is the far more important thing we need to focus on right now as a nation. It'll mean good American jobs. It'll mean good investment. It'll mean our security. But I appreciate you coming in here. I know this is a long one, and if you're here right now, I really hope you hit the like and subscribe button and share it with your friends. And I appreciate you coming in here and listening. You have a great day. Thank you.